Inside this room, all of my dreams become realities, and some of my realities become dreams.
What in the wide, wide world of sports is going on here? Alive! It's alive! It's alive!
You are listening to The Wilder Ride, getting wilder by the minute. Here are your hosts, Alan Sanders and Walt Murray.
Welcome back to The Wilder Ride, getting wilder by the minute. Happy Monday to you all out there if you're listening to this on the first run. If not, well, happy whatever day it happens to be. We are here in Season 2, diving into the film Blazing Saddles, one pious, candyass sidewinder at a time. I'm Alan Sanders, and I'm your host.
I'm Walt Murray, your co-host.
And joining us again, they hung out all weekend long. We got caught up on all of the John Ford flicks, including movies with John Wayne, Clint Eastwood. We watched Westerns all weekend long, and we're all ready to go right back at it. Jim Dunham joining us back in studios. Welcome.
Howdy, Alan.
Look at you.
Cowboy talk.
Cowboy talk. And we got Dwayne Towns also joining us. Welcome back, Dwayne.
Hello. That'd be good.
Hello. Nice to have you. Well, let's set the table for Monday here. Let's get us back into the film. If you last remember, on Friday, we were heading into the church, and we saw a lot of church people with their hymnals open, and they were singing the song that apparently we've been hearing that is now known as the Ballad of Rock Ridge. And we are going to start with the immortal close to any hymnal I've always heard in church, Into Shit. And we're going to end with No Sidewinding, Bushwhacking, and there's some stuff that happens in between. So, Walt, let's kick this off at the very beginning here. We've got the continuation of this hymn. Now, I know you had in your background, you once upon a time were going to seminary. Can you tell me what particular song or hymnal that this song comes out of?
I don't think that's from my denomination. I'm not sure what denomination, but they were right. It is accurate. Technically accurate. So.
Does anybody have do y'all sing? Jim, do you sing?
Doesn't relate to me, no.
Yeah. Dwayne, you guys, when you go to a church service, do you have lyrics like this in your mass?
Not that I ever went to. My grandfather was a Baptist minister.
Yeah, I bet he wasn't singing this song. Yeah, I don't think he...
No, we never had that never in any of our hymnals, thank you.
Yep, we agree.
What I love about it, though, and I think that's that Mel Brooks comedy, is it sounds like, if you're not paying attention,
that's right,
with the organ playing, with the church congregation singing, it sounds like a hymn.
What you expect, yeah, that's right. That's part of his humor.
I'm not up on a lot of church music. I'm one of those people who can't sing anyway, so I'm like, oh, song time. I guess I'll kick back listening for a while. Is this a hymn in of itself? Have you found out if this is that it's? I mean, in terms of the music.
Yeah, I
don't think it is. No, I think that it just sounds like a hymn. It has that. It's kind of a weird mix. It's not really a country or cowboy song. It's not really a hymn. And it's not really a ballad, so I don't know where this falls, but it's a good Mel Brooks.
Well, it's definitely written by Mel Brooks. The lyrics are written by Mel Brooks and John Morris. They came up with the lyrics, and then, of course, John Morris wrote the music for it. Because if you think about it, if you go back just a couple of minutes, it started off almost very upbeat, and it's a day in the life of Rock Ridge, and then the Marauders come in, and it continues to tell the story. So, in a sense, it's like a ballad, because it is telling the story of Rock Ridge. But it ends very much in the midst of a church service.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least a congregational meeting of some kind or something. It's something in a church.
Well, they all finish singing the song, finishing the story, catching us all up. And you already introduced us Friday to Reverend Johnson, played by Liam Dunn. He addresses the congregation, and I think this is interesting. You know, he initially says that there's some serious problems in the town. His exact lines are,
"Now, I don't have to tell you, good folks, what has been happening here in our beloved little town. Sheriff murdered, crops burned, stores looted, people stampeded, and cattle raped."
No, let's just stop it there for a moment, because there's a few more lines. Jim, you started laughing the minute he said that.
That's right, yeah. He just kind of gets him just a little backwards for what probably is really happening. Yeah.
I mean, because normally it's cattle stampeded and people raped.
You would think so. Yeah, you would think so.
But gets it a little backwards. And then he goes, "The time has come to act and act fast. And then he stares right at us, another breaking of the fourth wall, and immediately turns into,
I'm leaving.
I'm leaving. and literally leaves frame.
Yes, he does.
He who fights and runs away gets to fight another day. I have a boat waiting for me in the harbor.
Yes, and that's him.
Yeah.
Dwayne, I want to hear your thoughts on this scene when the Reverend is addressing the congregation. He's got that fire and brimstone as if you think he's going to suggest something heroic. And then his only answer is to run.
Yep, sheriff murdered, stores looted, people stampeded, and cattle raped. That cracks me up. That tears me up. Then he talks very firmly and says, now it's time to act and act first. I'm leaving.
Yep.
And that really gets you into the movie.
It does. That's funny.
I believe it's the Gabby Hayes gentleman stands up and, curses them out about leaving. You hold on, you're not going anywhere, and says his line is all gibberish, and it's really neat. It's really funny.
Well, and the thing is, it's not Gabby Hayes, but I think it's supposed to be an allusion to him.
Exactly.
Because his name is Gabby Johnson.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Gabby Hayes looks like Gabby Johnson,
Yeah, and even the costuming looks like Gabby Hayes used to use. Because Gabby was, a sidekick for guys like Roy Rogers, and a lot of times he wore those silly hats. By the way, for just here's a little trivia, he has a feather in his hat. Mm-hmm. That feather is an actual mature golden eagle tail feather, which is not something you normally see. And somebody in the prop shop or prop house that for Warner Brothers was able to have an actual golden eagle tail feather that they stuck in his hat.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very cool. No, I don't know a lot. I knew who Gabby Hayes was only by name. I've never seen a lot of him. Uh-huh. Was he a gibberish frontier talking person?
No, but he did have a lisp or a way. His voice had a distinct kind of sound that this guy's trying to imitate. Yeah, but he was not. He was not a person who couldn't speak fluently. I mean, he didn't have a problem with language, but he did have an accent, and so he was portrayed as a sort of backwoods kind of guy.
Okay, but he didn't talk in gibberish.
Didn't talk in gibberish, but he was not considered an educated man in the movies he was in. He was looked upon. He was a sidekick. He's your typical sidekick, and sidekicks like Smiley Burnett, who played Frog Milhouse, and other sidekicks like that. Most every hero had a sidekick. Hoppy, Gene, Roy, all those guys had sidekicks. California, or somebody who they could talk to. Pancho, Cisco and Pancho, sidekicks. And the sidekicks sometimes had the funniest lines. Sometimes the humor was the sidekicks was used for the humor in the movies.
So and that's kind of true to today's modern filmmaking.
Sure,
the sidekick is often the comic relief.
It's really true. And look at Clint Eastwood movies, the Clint Eastwood westerns that he made, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and The Fistful of Dollars, $2 more, even more dollars, spare change, all those movies.
Spare change.
You had Eli Wallach.
Yeah,
and Eli Wallach was just this over the top crazy character. And you needed that because Clint Eastwood is just going to walk around and squint.
Right, and not have a whole lot to say.
He's not going to talk. He's not going to have lines. He's just going to squint, and you're going to have this great music in the background. So you need somebody doing crazy stuff, and it's Eli Wallach. And so many times it is that the second character actor who really holds together and entertains the people.
It's crazy. We're going to talk a little bit more about famous gunfighters and other heroes of the West when we get introduced to the Waco Kid. But it reminded me when you talked about Clint Eastwood without a whole lot of lines. Initially, people in Hollywood, when he was young trying to break in, said he would never be able to do a whole lot. His neck was too long, his Adam's apple protruded too far, and he never knew how to deliver a line with any kind of emotion.
So he made a career out of not having emotion.
Right. So apparently he wasn't going to go anywhere in Hollywood. Good to know that he's, 92?
Yeah, still making
directing.
Movies. Yeah, still making
Just
movies.
had The Mule come out at the time when we recorded this a few weeks, or about a month ago, right? The Mule came out
a month ago, right?
Yeah, about a month ago.
Mm-hmm.
So he's like one of my heroes.
Oh, yeah.
Dwayne, what about you? How does Clint Eastwood stack up, since we're on Clint for the moment? How does he stack up as far as Western or just movie icons?
I mean, I love Clint Eastwood. I actually like Clint Eastwood better than I did John Wayne. I like them both, but, John Wayne was the man, and Clint Eastwood, when I was growing up, a fistful of dollars, a few dollars more, and the good, the bad, and the ugly were coming out, and you hear the music and everything, mostly from the good, the bad, and the ugly. I loved it. I mean, that's what caught me on the cowboy genre. That did it for me. And I still watch him religiously now, and I can recite every line that he says. I know when it's coming.
I got to tell you.
I'll even dress up. I dress up in my Clint Eastwood boots, my hat. I got all the gear. And I dress up and I'll sit in my living room with a drink, and I'll recite the lines, line for line. That's how much I love it.
I tell you, growing up, my dad watched all the Westerns, and even though, and I'm kind of like Dwayne here, I appreciated the John Wayne movies for who John Wayne was, but I always liked the Clint Eastwood movies a little bit more. And I don't know if it's because I was of a different generation, raised on movies like Star Wars and things with a little bit more action, a little more tense, versus maybe a little bit more of the Hollywood style of the cowboy.
I'll tell you one thing about the John Wayne. If you really look at his movies, he plays a flawed character a lot, and he's not admirable in movies like The Searchers. He's going to do some very bad things if he catches up with the Indians that kidnapped
the
girl. He's going to kill the girl. Once you realize that, you realize this is not a nice person. In my favorite John Wayne movie, which is Red River, he's brutal to his men. He gets his men killed. He puts them in a very bad place, and Montgomery Clift is trying to stop him from being so bad. And so if you're a John Wayne fan, you realize that in many, many cases of his movies, he plays a kind of despicable, flawed character, and in some ways that it makes him even better. But on other times, you say there's other heroes maybe that you want to identify with better.
Well, I think it's worth for whoever's listening now, because we are dealing with a Western. It's a Western parody, but the Western is uniquely Americana. And I know a lot of our listeners and subscribers that are in Europe love Westerns because they don't have that.
It's an American entertainment. Goes back to Buffalo Bill and the Wild West shows, and some people say that Buffalo Bill's Wild West show is a precursor of rodeo, but that's not true, because in a Wild West show you pay somebody to fall off the horse, whereas in rodeo you're competing in a competition, athletic competition, and the person who rides the best gets paid. In a movie or in a Wild West show, your job is to do what the script says, which may mean you fall off the horse, and so the Wild West shows are really the what led the way to film. To
Westerns, right. I guess the typical tropes that you now find in almost all the Western movies, especially when they were first coming out in cinema. It's funny because didn't Buffalo Bill actually perform for the Queen of England?
He did, yes, he did, and they worked for the Miller Brothers 101 Ranch too, and they made films. They made bison films. There was a film that was made in 1908 that was called The Bank Robbery. And two of the people in the movie were actually marshals of the Old West. Bill Tillman and Chris Madsen were actual marshals. And the guy who's leading the posse after the outlaws is Quanah Parker, the last great chief of the Comanche Indians. Great movie. Just really good.
Now, this is before they realized that you don't have to speak or say anything, because these were all silent
These were all silent films, but the Bank Robbery is a very entertaining movie with the people who actually lived the life of the Old West were in the movie.
That to me is the most amazing thing. I know we've kind of segued, but it's fun to just talk about, because growing up, I was born in the 70s, so I would watch these movies in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. But the stories of the Old West, a lot of them were in the late 1800s, and so a lot of these guys lived into the early 1900s.
Wyatt Earp died in 1929.
And to think that, for some reason I keep thinking that's so long ago, but then you go, wait, but he lived through the Roaring 20s.
That's right. Pat Masterson died in 1921. So you got guys well into after the turn of the century.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And it always takes me off guard. I don't know about you, Walt, but I always, I keep thinking that this is some like mythical time, hundreds of years ago, but it really wasn't.
No,
No, when I think about it, one of the stakes in the ground for me is 1911 because two of my grandparents were born in 1911. So a lot of times I kind of think, well, my grandfather was like 10 when this guy died. You know, like there is that bridge to that history there for me. So it really is amazing how short a time has passed, but how much time has changed.
Yeah, he could have actually seen Buffalo Bill in his show because he was doing a show until 1916.
That's really crazy. Well, one of the things that I've kind of learned as I've prepared for this movie, a lot of the Westerns were more a product of their time when the movie was actually written and shot than they were a product of the Old West.
Yeah.
And so they were more reflective of the contemporary values and social norms of those time periods. So you do have to kind of be careful of what you adapt and say, oh, yeah, that was definitely from that.
We really see that in television.
Right.
And maybe that's a whole subject for future stories, but to examine the changes that happen in television. When John F. Kennedy is killed, and when Bobby Kennedy is killed, and Martin Luther King are killed, the television Western completely changes. Absolutely does a upside down flip. No longer does Gunsmoke have a death as the major function. Up until that time, the story is always based upon Matt Dillon killing the bad guy at some point. And after that, the stories become stories of going out and meeting a family that has a daughter, and they're afraid that he'll marry the daughter and take away their cook and housekeeper, so they lock him in the barn, and the whole story. And you get to the end of the show, and nobody got killed. And it was a deliberate attempt to take the violence out of those shows.
Wow. That is amazing. You know, while you were talking, I was just about to say, and I know we'll have you let everybody know at the end of this episode where to find you, but there is a great gallery in the Booth Western Art Museum in Georgia, here in Cartersville, just north of Atlanta, that actually is a representation of what Hollywood thought the West was.
Yeah, we call it the Real West, REEL.
Like movie reel.
The Real West. And we also have a wonderful collection of movie posters. Great collection of original movie posters.
That's awesome, because if you go to the booth, you can go in there and see how the Hollywood spun things, but then you have actual other areas with not only paintings and pictures, but actually you've got pieces that people can see, actual saddles, actual guns, and Indian dress that would be appropriate for the time.
Exactly, you're right.
All right, well, let's get back to this, because just as our faithful leader of the flock, Reverend Johnson, says the only answer is, I'm leaving, here's what the script says Gabby Johnson is supposed to say. He doesn't say anything close to this. He's supposed to say, hold on, carn snarn it, gall darn it. I'll be a horn-swaggled, bushwhacking, side-widened, saddle horn, rubber, blah, 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 blah. And it actually literally says that, and then says the rest of his dialogue is incomprehensible. But I don't think that would have worked, because you needed to have something for the congregation to hear his argument why he needs to stay.
Yeah.
And so I had to transcript this, because it wasn't in the script. I had to write it down. What he does say, and Walt, you and I might have a disagreement about this. He says,
Hey, you get back here, you pious, candyass sidewinder. Ain't no way that nobody's gonna leave this town.
you get back here, you pious, candy-ass sidewinder. There ain't no way that nobody is gonna leave this town. No, I'm stopping there.
See, I'm well-versed in American
now,
gibberish.
see, you do speak redneck.
Yes, I do, fluently. And I know a lot of gibberish. What I had was, you get back here, you pious pain in the ass sidewinder.
All right. So
you can see it's a great gulf between where we are. I just don't know that we can settle this.
Can we bridge this divide? Where are we going to? Because when I went back and listened to several times with headphones, I hear a hard k sound, like either a K or a C that's being said, like candy or ka. But it sounds like he's also swallowing the letter K at the same time he's saying it. So what did you think it was?
Well, I had it as pain in the ass.
Could he have said cane in the ass?
It could.
Because I heard candy ass.
There's no telling. Well, and the funny thing is, when you told me that and we went back and listened,
Candy ass.
I can hear how you get there, but I'm not quite sure that I agree with you yet. So.
And we don't know, because it wasn't written down.
It was
right.
It
wasn't written down. So let me. We'll take a poll in the room. Jim, what do you think? Would you side with candy ass or pain in the ass?
I would think it would be a pain in the ass, but certainly either one of them works as far as humor goes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Dwayne, what do you, when you go back, because you may never have thought that at some point in time I was going to be asked to transcribe Gabby Johnson's lines for a podcast analyzing a movie 1 minute at a time. But what do you think he says?
I think he said candyass.
Ah.
But what he mixed in there with, I don't know whether he said something else as well. So it's all it puts you in the same genre.
Yeah.
Either or, you know.
Well, I think, do we agree with what he says after that? Because he says, there ain't no way that nobody is going to leave this town. Hell, I was born here, and I was raised here, and dang gummit, I'm going to die here. And no sidewinding, bushwhacking.
Ain't no way that nobody is gonna leave this town. Hell, I was born here, and I was raised here, and dadgummit, I'm gonna die here. And no sidewinding, bushwhacking.
And that's where the minute ends.
Yeah.
Yes.
Did you have that transcribed?
To the word.
All right, good deal.
Yeah,
because we're going to come up tomorrow with some where he ends his monologue that I'm going to have absolutely no idea what he said.
Well, did you do the deep dive on the words here and look at sidewinder and bushwhacker?
Well, I do know what a sidewinder is. That's a nickname for a rattlesnake.
Well, it is.
Or a missile on the side of an F-14 Tomcat.
Yes, which is my favorite term. But it's also someone who is deceitful and can't follow a straight line.
Ooh.
So,
but was it was a derivative of a snake?
Of the snake, right? That's kind of definition number 1 or 2, depending on what you're looking at. So,
wow. Jim, what about you? Have you heard that definition of sidewinder as somebody who...
I've heard people use sidewinder not only for the snake, but for behavior like a snake. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but did you know that as being sort of evasive or not straight as an arrow?
No, I hadn't really thought of that.
I didn't think about it either.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you look at different dictionaries, it kind of flip-flops which one's first and which one's second. But yeah, those are the 2 definitions.
Dwayne, what about you? Had you ever heard the definition of sidewinder used that way?
No, I have not.
And then what was the other word?
Bushwhacker.
So bushwhacker, that's an interesting one. It's someone who uses surprise tactics to deceive an opponent.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, first of all, it's a person trying to kill somebody. Okay. So it's an assassin.
Right.
Okay.
Is that where the term whacked comes from?
A bushwhacker,
exactly.
for example, is not somebody trying to hold up a stagecoach. He's not called a bushwhacker unless he wants to kill the stagecoach driver. If he's hiding behind the bush and he's going to whack the stagecoach driver, then he's a bushwhacker. So, but it's a term meant for a person who is trying to assassinate somebody, trying to kill somebody, and hiding undercover, and then trying to murder.
I'm glad you brought that up because, Walt, I always thought a bushwhacker was just a term for somebody who was like raking bushes or somebody who trimmed bushes.
Right.
I never associated what I thought was a contemporary term to whack someone. I always heard that in mob movies. Mm-hmm. So I never thought of a bushwhacker as someone who hides in the bush.
Yeah, bushwhacker is an old term for a killer.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And basically they use deceit to accomplish their goal.
Mm-hmm. Hiding in the bushes.
Hiding in the bushes.
Dwayne, what about you?
He's not a bushwhacker.
He's not what? I didn't suggest that Dwayne was a bushwhacker.
Nah, not quite. I may switch him a little bit, but I don't got him.
I've learned something new today. That is why we bring on guests, and is why Walt does all of his research. And he's so well. This is right up your alley.
There's a cowboy term similar called bush popper. Okay, and a bush popper is a guy who goes in among the deep, dense shrubbery, especially like in the hill country of Texas, where there's little tight tree things, and gets cattle who are hiding in the bushes and gets them to come out so they can be branded or shipped or whatever.
Interesting.
So a brush popper or a bush popper.
He's kind of keeping them in the herd.
Yeah, the brush popper goes in and brings out the cattle that are hiding. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense.
All right. Well, then I'm gonna appeal to your hillbilly backwoods West Virginia moonshine running history and roots. What is dag nabbit or dag gummit?
If you have to ask.
Because it sounds to me like it's just a made-up word that instead of saying something foul or something as a curse word.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah, it's kind of like consarnate or...
See, darn is really something you say if you don't want to say damn.
Right.
Okay. So this is like, instead of saying, God, you come up with a word that is livable, so that you don't have to actually be profane.
So dadgummit is a nice way of saying something that you might mean using the Lord's name in vain.
Exactly.
But you don't want to say the Lord's name in
That's
vain
right.
because, you don't want to commit a sin.
Exactly. That's
right.
exactly what it is.
And
say,
you
"Dadgummit."
also want to be able to get it by the censors.
Yeah.
So
That's right.
That's the other advantage to it is it's almost a cuss word, but not quite.
Yep.
That's like when the reinvention of Battlestar Galactica was on TV and they kept using the word frack.
Right.
They go, what the frack is going on here? You can get past the censors.
Yeah.
We all know what you mean, but it was just the new way of saying a bad word in that time frame.
That's right.
Interesting. So dadgummit.
Which I think they actually used that word in the original series too.
I don't think so.
But not as often.
No,
So,
I don't remember that at all.
well, then you need to go back and read one.
We're not doing the Battlestar Galactica minute. We're doing the Gene Wilder minute. We're doing
We'll ask another
Blazing
expert.
Saddles. All right. So what else? What other words do we have here that he says?
Well, we'll have some more tomorrow, but those are the two big ones that I looked at. Well, the three big ones.
So why would he call him, whether he uses the word, now see, Dwayne's on my side, so we're going to say that I'm right. We're going to say that, because I like Dwayne, that he is a pious candyass sidewinder.
Well, obviously the pious is that he's the town minister, and whichever side you go with, whether it's pain in the ass or candy ass, I think
Because
those
he's
speak for
running. That's
themselves.
why I think it's candy ass.
Yeah.
He's not standing up and being a man.
Yeah, which would make sense. And then, the sidewinder, obviously, and he really is just kind of hurling the insults his way at this point, where probably every insult he could think of he used, because he's fed up. I mean, this is his town. This is where he's going to stay. Don't want to be pushed around or
gonna
pushed out.
die.
Yeah, and he was born here. He was raised here, and consarn it, he's gonna or dadgummit, he's gonna die here.
Well, I just consulted our good friend Urban Dictionary.
Right.
And the Urban Dictionary term for candy ass is a wuss, someone scared of taking changes or doing things that look dangerous.
That would fit.
That would make sense.
So I think I'm right. I win.
Well,
You and Dwayne.
I
hang
win.
in
Me
there.
and Dwayne, we were right.
well, since he ad-libbed this, I would love to get Jack Starrett on the show. However,
Yeah, that's going to be hard to do.
he's no longer with us.
Do we know anybody who can perform a seance or anything?
I know some people who think they can, but we're
Because
not
that's
going to
not
have
gonna
them
work.
on. So
Yeah, Jack Starrett actually died on March 27th, 1989.
52 years old.
He's got to be wearing makeup in this.
Yeah, he's kind of here's the
How
problem.
is it spelled? How is his last name spelled?
Starrett, Starrett.
I wonder if he's.
But he's a junior.
Well, there was a Charles Starrett who was known as the Durango Kid in the movies. I wonder if they were related.
Yeah, he had been a little bit older, but
Yeah.
they had to be.
Yeah.
I would guess.
I don't know, but then he's obviously made up, but that's not a fake beard. That's a real beard. Now, maybe it's just grayed, but he doesn't look that old.
Well, here's Jack Starrett's problem.
What?
Well, actually, it's either Claude Ennis Starrett or
Claude
Jack
Ennis Starrett Jr. is what he went by in
That was
this
his birth
particular-
name. He had kidney failure due to alcoholism. So, as we know, alcoholism takes its toll.
Funny, because later in the movie, he actually knocks a guy out with his breath after
Yes.
drinking moonshine.
That's right. So he was well versed in that. And actually, the way that he was discovered for this movie was he was at a party in Los Angeles and was doing his best drunk imitation. And it just so happens that Mel Brooks was there, thought he was hilarious, and cast him in this part.
Wow.
So
Interesting.
Wait, so how old did you say he was when he died?
52.
And he died in 89.
Mm-hmm.
So he was what, like 30 in this movie?
Yeah, he would have been in his 30s. Well, he was born in 1936, so he'd have been in his 40s.
Something doesn't add up then.
I don't know. That's just
We're going to have to check the facts on this
I looked at it on a couple of different things, but here's a little bit of here's some things I do know about him. His first movie was in 1969 called Run Angel Run, and it was a motorcycle gang movie. He played some background character in there, but it's kind of one of those late 60s, early 70s goofball movies that probably doesn't even exist anywhere anymore. He was in a movie called Cry Blood Apache, where he played the deacon. Do you remember the Planet of the Apes TV series?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, sure.
1974, he was in one of the episodes called The Horse Race, which I man, somewhere back there in the back of my mind, it exists. He was in a movie called Cleopatra Jones.
So a star of B movies.
Yeah, well, here's where it gets fun for us. Starsky and Hutch.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
2 episodes of The Dukes of Hazzard. On an episode of Hill Street Blues. And his final credit is 1982. And it's a show called Kiss My Grits. I assumed it was some sort of Alice spinoff.
Wow.
But actually, it's about a man who heads to Mexico with a mobster's girlfriend.
Wow.
I'm not really sure how we haven't seen that.
I know. There's nothing new under the sun.
It sounds
Hold on, let
terrible.
me consult the Oscar.com website. I'm sure it was recognized at some point by its peers.
Yeah, Dwayne, have you seen any of those movies that Jack Stewart was in?
No, I did not. Sorry.
What's that one? Kiss My Grits?
Kiss My Grits, 1982.
I'm going to have to go find that. I hope it's on Netflix or something. I want to find a movie that is about a man stealing a mobster's boss to head to Mexico and why it's called Kiss My Grits.
Yeah, it's got to be a classic. You could really put a Jack Stewart collection together, sell it for about $3. And outside of Blazing Saddles, there's not a whole lot of meat here.
Wow.
So, but he's kind of one of those actors that had, he had several, timely pieces that he worked on and a couple of cowboy westerns that he worked on.
Yeah, but you know what? He will forever be immortalized in this movie.
Oh, yeah.
He
It's a
stands
great
out.
scene.
No question.
Yeah, it's a great scene.
Great scene. All right, well, we are ending with him making those lines to the congregation, or certainly yelling at both the pastor, the minister of this flock, and he's starting to turn around and tell everybody that, and no sidewinding, bushwhacking, and that's where we end this minute. So before we wrap up and find out what's going to come into tomorrow, Walt, I'll start with you first. Anything else on your notes that we didn't cover?
No, I think I'm clear there.
All right, Dwayne, we'll head to you through the phone line. What anything else that you have for this minute that we didn't cover?
Oh, nothing at all. Thanks.
Jim, what about you?
Oh, I'm fine with what we have.
Excellent. All right. Well, Dwayne, we're going to start with you. It's a Monday. If somebody is coming in and they didn't go back and listen last week, folks, they were with us last Thursday and Friday. But if you're just tuning in this morning and you're not going to go back yet, you want to finish the whole episode, Dwayne, tell people where people can learn a little bit more about you.
You can learn more about me at ironhorseman.tripod.com/bronzebuckaroo and on Facebook at www.facebook.com/Dwayne Towns.
Dwayne Towns. Awesome. Jim, where can people learn a little bit more about you?
The best thing to do is contact me at the Booth Western Art Museum in Cartersville, Georgia. It's www.boothmuseum.org, and come by and visit, and I'd love to come up and have a cup of coffee and talk about old Western movies.
Excellent. And let me go to my co-host here, Walt Murray. People are piling in on this Monday. They've stumbled across it because they heard somebody say something about the West, and they've finally found their way to Blazing Saddles. How do people learn a little bit more about us?
Feel free to head on over to our website, which is thewilderride.com, and you can find all kinds of stuff there. You can link to our episodes. You can link to some of our special episodes, link to our Patreon page, our Facebook, and also you can go on there, and if you'd like to find out more about either one of our guests today or any of our past guests, there's a list there with bios and links to them, and you could spend a good afternoon going through all the fun stuff on there.
Excellent. Come back tomorrow, folks. We've got minute number 17 coming your way, and we're going to start with hornswoggling. So we've got another word we got to look up, and we're going to end with "We didn't give up then," and "by gum." And that's where we're going to end. So we're going to have this continuation of people apparently speaking up within the congregation. But to get all of that, you'll have to come back tomorrow for another episode of this, The Wilder Ride. Gol darn dang it, bang it.
You pain in the ass, candy ass.
Hold on, con snarn it, gol darn it, I'll be hornswaggle, bushwhacking, sidewinding, rattle horn, rabber, dabber, 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 dabber.
Hey, I was born in this podcast, and I'll die in this podcast. you can learn a little bit more about us.
Hey, Gabby.
Yeah, I feel like Gabby at this point.
Hey, no way you're going to tell anybody where to find our show.
You sidewinding.